How are
Excellent,
you?
excellent. I'm good. I'm good. This is a new podcast, and I'm having a few guests, and yeah, it's a fascinating journey. Lots of different people doing a variety of things, and yeah, so I'm also a writer as well.
Are
So,
you? Okay,
and
amazing.
yeah, so it's always good to meet with fellow
Yeah,
writers.
it's always nice to connect.
Good and connect. Yeah, so I think this is going to be just a casual discussion with for me. I will give you a few questions, like a few prompts, but yeah, just feel relaxed and yeah, it's not gonna be, like a super challenging thing, challenging questions. So
Okay,
yeah,
okay, no, that's great. I'm
yes.
ready for
Yeah.
most things. I've done a few podcasts over the years, so it's just been nice to talk to as many people as possible and spread the message. So thank you for having me, really.
Okay, so then let's start. So welcome everyone to the podcast Discover Your Divine Talents. Today we have a guest with us on this podcast, uh, Bijal. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Please correct
Yeah,
me if
yeah, yeah,
it's
Bijou, yeah. Yeah,
Bijal. Okay,
it's great.
yes. And yeah, so we're going to talk about bibliotherapy, which is something I haven't heard of before, something new to me. And let's start with my first question. So, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and about your projects?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Bijou. I'm a bibliotherapist and an author. I've been in this space for 7 years. I was in banking, investment banking prior to that. So it's been a very different journey. But I mean, I loved finance and mathematics, but at the same time, I was really curious about psychology and helping others and working with other people to develop their strengths and their talents. And I think that's why I did this pivot, um, where I did a sort of part-time diploma in counseling and psychodynamic counseling, so it's Freudian, using Freudian principles. And I did that whilst working in banking, and I kind of took a bit of a break, but carried on. And then when I had when my husband moved to San Francisco, I obviously moved with him due to a job opportunity he had, and it felt like the perfect time to launch this because I couldn't carry on working in banking. There was no rollout for me in San Francisco, and this is something I was so passionate about. And really, bibliotherapy is a different take on counseling because it's the use of literature as a therapeutic tool. And I wanted to, use my own experience of counseling where I had to be, whilst I was training, I had to be in counseling myself. And during that time, I used a lot of literature, a lot of texts, novels, fiction, nonfiction. And I found that it was really, really helpful. And I ended up diving deeper and discovered this whole history of therapeutic reading and, stemming back to the ancient Greeks and Egyptians up to Montaigne and, Shakespeare, Wordsworth, Eliot, Freud. Like there was this whole uncharted history. And, part of my big project for the book was to kind of pull that history together and essentially tell the world or any reader who bought the book about it. But of course, I used that research to pioneer my own methodology on bibliotherapy, but it was, of course, very much based on academic research and dissertations of other pioneers that came before me in the 20th century, because bibliotherapy was used extensively during the World Wars and even prior to that, in the 19th century, doctors would also use it as a form of social prescription. I mean, it kind of stemmed back, you it was way ahead of its time, and it's still taken some time for it to kind of spread um, worldwide, I guess. In the UK, it's still developing. In the US, it's still developing. Australia, but it's been my mission. There are some institutes that you know train people on this, but it's still very few and far between. So I have some online courses that I've developed to help others gain an awareness of it and use it in their own practice. So I've had lots of counselors and psychologists and mental health professionals train up on it, but also librarians and booksellers, to inform their readers advisory. And I've also had readers really curious about it. And I use a variety of techniques and tools that I call creative bibliotherapy techniques. So, I guess I wanted to pull all of that experience together in my book, Bibliotherapy, The Healing Power of Reading, which has now been translated into 10 languages internationally, which is wonderful, including, Turkish and Bulgarian and Portuguese and Hungarian version coming soon, Chinese coming soon, Arabic coming soon. I mean, there's Slovenian. Yeah, so it's been really nice to bring that to readers everywhere. And it only came out last year, and I'm still on the book tour. The hardback's coming out in the US in April. A version just launched in India. Paperback's coming out in September. So it's really been this very sort of passionate, heartfelt project that I've been working on for a long time, and I'm just really keen to get it out into readers' hands so that they can use literature as a therapeutic tool. I mean, I can talk more about the techniques that I use, but they're very unique to bibliotherapy, very unique to reading, and they include like a lot of written techniques, a written, work as well.
Yeah, so I've got so many questions about
Yeah.
the book and about your techniques. So let's start with techniques first. So in terms of bibliotherapy techniques, can you just tell us a little bit more about what you're using, especially for people like myself who are not familiar with bibliotherapy at all?
Yeah, sure. So, when people read, the first thing I get them to do in a session is, I want them to do some literary journaling. I want them to maybe even do that at home whilst they're reading, because I prescribe a reading list. And so they might pick one or two books from that reading list, and then they'll do some literary journaling, which is very much a stream of consciousness of reflections and thoughts that come up for them whilst they're reading, which often offer clues to our inner psyche, to our subconscious, things that might have really struck us whilst we've been reading, or that have really resonated with us during that reading process. And often that offers clues into our inner lives and what's going on for us. So I get them to bring those reflections to me, and we'll use those in a counseling format. But of course, if you didn't want to necessarily see a counselor or bibliotherapist, you can use these techniques at home, and you can review them. You review your reflections, review your journaling to see if it still stands for you, even after 5 days of a daily journaling practice, if it's still true. Like sometimes you write things down, and then after 5 days, we've relieved them that they don't even feel relevant anymore. And that's great. That's the beauty. That's the whole point of writing, expressive writing. It's all about bringing emotional relief and healing. So, and sometimes we're still stuck on a point, and we need, somebody, a professional, to kind of help us work through that in a counseling session or a therapy session. So that essentially is, my foundational technique. And then I will suggest other things as we go along, including other texts. And this could be across fiction, nonfiction, or poetry. It's not just nonfiction or self-help, which a lot of people would assume. In fact, fiction's a lot more powerful and a lot more striking, because it allows us to connect with our emotions far better sometimes than a factual text or a report of nonfiction, for example. So I'll use a lot of that material to work through emotions, etc. And I often want my clients to have goals, even to come with me with preset goals, because I want them to feel like they're working through something. The problem with traditional therapy is that you'll often come away just feeling like you're just in this process for months and months and months, and you're not making progress. So my approach is very different, and I feel like that written piece, or that piece of expression, is almost like an accelerated form of healing, because it really allows us to connect with our emotion, often bringing catharsis a lot quicker. We feel very safe to explore our emotions through a character or another story than we do when there's in traditional talk therapy where we're just directly talking to a therapist. Our defenses relax more naturally when we're reading a story. So all of these things are great ways of really exploring our inner lives, bringing more self-awareness and insight, essentially.
Fascinating. Yeah, it's fascinating. So, um, my next question would be about my personal experience. So, I was wondering whether with bibliotherapy, we can learn more about internal life of people, who they really are, their subconscious levels. So by looking at how they read books and how they analyze what they have read. So I'm a member of a book club, and when we read books, we do have quite a few discussions about the same books, and
Yeah,
sometimes people just have so different experiences with the same book. And I remember we've been discussing the book Eat, Pray, Love, and it
yeah,
caused such um, I would say different points of view from our group, and
yes, yeah,
so polarized views, as if we were reading different books. So, and that's quite fascinating that people experience the same book in completely different ways. So, does it tell you that we are different people? We have different traumas, different perceptions of life. What is your point of view on this?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're always reading with a filter, right? And that filter is very much preset by our own human experiences, our past, our childhood, our upbringing, our values. So, often we can feel like our experience of the book is completely different to someone else's because they're probably connecting with the things that strike them the most or emotions that sort of resonate with them the most, and that's been more of a focus for them. So, this is the whole thing about bibliotherapy. It's really leveraging your reading to bring about the things that you're connecting with, that you're struggling with. Sometimes it could be, really connected with a character's sadness, or we've really connected with a character's anger, and it's probably because we're connecting with our own anger or sadness within ourselves. It's, reading is a great way to self-empathize and help validate our own inner feelings. And I think with Eat, Pray, Love, I think she does such a fascinating job of connecting with so many parts of ourselves that we don't necessarily get to connect with in day-to-day life, in conventional life, because she does something that most people don't get an opportunity to do, that freedom to escape, to explore and taste something so different in a different culture, and to travel through different countries and um, you know hit rock bottom. I mean, all of those things, come with their risks, and a lot of people don't want to go there because even sometimes, even though hitting rock bottom is a good thing sometimes because it really allows us to then refocus and actually achieve our goals. We don't want to do that. So I think she really allows us to go there, but in a safe space, in the safe space of the literary text. So, and different people will resonate with different parts of it. Some people would be really intrigued by the romance. Some people are really intrigued by the freedom to create something from a really difficult experience. All those things that she explores in the book. And the thing that person's going through the most will probably kind of stay with them the most. And it's brilliant because it offers lots of clues to work with in counseling and lots of material, that we can work with. So yeah, it's a great book. I think she's very good at connecting readers with their emotions through her
Yeah,
writing.
it's a fascinating book, but I've heard so polarizing views, even
Yes,
from
yeah,
different writers, saying to me, I was talking the other day with a writer in a writing group, and she told me, oh, you like Elizabeth Gilbert. Hope you don't write in the same style as she has done in Eat, Pray, Love. It's absolutely horrible. So I was a bit shocked that
I was really
people
shocked because
experience
her
it
other book,
this way.
Big Magic, is amazing. I don't know if you read that one.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it's
as a
amazing as well.
writer, she inspires you to just write and be so creative that it's like having a coach bringing out the best in your writing. So, excusing Eat, Pray, Love for the people who feel that way, but Big Magic, the other one, The Signature of All
Hmm.
Things,
Hmm.
The City of, that other one, where she goes back into the 1920s. It's a fiction novel on theatre actors. Um, God, I cannot remember the name now. But yeah, that was post Eat, Pray, Love.
Hmm.
So yeah, she's got great ideas, I think. And I
Yeah.
think she needs to be read in all that breadth. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's fine to have polarizing views though, because it could be that there's something really that's irritating you about that story, and that maybe you're connecting with this disgust or you're connecting with this anger, and it's great because it's something maybe that you need to explore, in that counseling session. So
Absolutely. Yeah. So coming back to bibliotherapy, so how do you think bibliotherapy work connects to the work of traditional psychologists, psychotherapists? Any particular stream that it is close to, Freud, for instance, or any other
yeah, look, I mean, I
traditional
always call
writers?
bibliotherapy a subset of art therapy because art therapy is very much about using the arts and using the arts to connect with emotion. So it could be used across a variety of different psychological functions, tools. So it could be used with CBT, it could be used in a Gestalt
Mhm.
setting, it could be used in a psychodynamic setting because it's very much an adjunct tool, because the reflections that come up for us during reading can then be taken to a Gestalt practitioner or a psychodynamic practitioner, and it's about making those connections. Um, so in that sense, it's very broad, and even a lot of life coaches use it. So that's what I love about it. It's sort of this overarching medium through which we can connect with ourselves. Because sometimes with traditional talk therapy, we could feel quite afraid of sharing things with the therapist because of the risk of judgment, or we're unable to let our defenses down. But if you're just reading and journaling, it's total freedom to just write down what you want, and then you can see what you want to share with your therapist. But it does allow you to put everything down on paper, and that is half the work because that's half of the emotional relief that comes with it. So yeah, so I'd say that's the beauty of something so overarching as bibliotherapy.
Okay, so my next question would be quite interesting. So this channel is called Discover Your Divine Talents, and it started with the problem that I was experiencing myself, and I saw a lot of people as well experience self-discovery. So how to find your life purpose, how to discover what to do in life, what are your talents and real interests. And my next question would be, so what would you recommend to people on this journey of self-discovery in relation to bibliotherapy? So how can bibliotherapy help them?
Yeah, so I would say that if you are there's some great books obviously to read and explore your creative language, your creative passion. And for example, Big Magic, Elizabeth Gilbert, The Artist's Way, Rick Rubin's The Creative Act. I think these are all memoirs. I mean, they're all memoirs, funnily enough, but I often find memoirs are really similar to novel. And it does sort of hit all the high notes for emotional connection. And I would really recommend reading those 3 books because they are wonderful ways to channel or to refocus our minds on pursuing something potentially creative, or even if it's not creative, just, out of the box thinking to help you reconstruct your next path. Because I often say that as you walk on the path appears. But we need just some guidance on how to sort of walk on that path. And I think these books are phenomenal. And I don't want to give like loads of recommendations, but if I would say those are my top 3. Discovering your talent, because and your strengths, your weaknesses. Like I just feel like, um, just pursue something creative, even if it's just a side hobby or a hustle, because you don't know what that's going to turn into. And just give it a chance. And I'd say everyone is a little bit creative. So use that as a tool for healing, use that as a tool for pursuing something that you're really passionate about, or just as a tool for relaxation and escapism if you've got a really sort of non-creative job. So for me, those are the 3 things that I would say in terms of how you can get closer to your own divine talent.
Thank you. And I wanted to learn more about yourself and your path of self-transformation. So obviously, you already told us you were working in investment banking, which is quite a different industry from book publishing, book writing, bibliotherapy. So it looks like a major transition. And can you tell us a little bit more about your story, how this transition happened, how did you change during this time?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I did love maths and I loved finance, and it was, investment banking just seemed like the ultimate kind of, place for me, because I could really leverage those skills and that interest and that passion. But as I worked in the corporate setting, I think I learned that I didn't know a lot about myself. Because it's so left brain orientated that we're just working with figures and facts and numbers, and there's no exploration of the emotional life, there's no exploration of the deeper purpose, the wider meanings of why we do what we do. And I was really fascinated by other people, even in the banking sector, like how they thought, the way they behaved, all that behavioral psychology. And I just wanted to learn more about the human mind and the human brain. And psychology had never been something I'd thought about studying. And obviously entering the real world, and getting a real job and really sort of adulting kind of made me aware of this right brain world, where the world of emotions, the world of influencing others, the world of working with people and what makes them tick and what makes you tick. And just that fascination led me to do this study in counseling. And then that thing just led to something else. And I'd obviously loved reading. I'd grown up with reading. Literature was always a big part of my life. And I, whilst I was strong on the analytical side, I also just really loved reading and writing. And, I felt like that was going to be my real sort of creative passion, was to really pursue this, where I could use it to help other people and help them develop their skills and nurture their talent. And reading had been such a good way for me to, literature had been such a good way for me to do that in my counseling sessions, in the personal one-to-one therapy that I had to have as part of my training, that I thought, okay, I'm going to show other people how to use this for themselves and really leverage that. So, and I just felt more passionate about it at the end, I just felt really, really connected to what I do, and I could see the rewards. And I had to choose that path, even though financially it might have been, not as financially rewarding. It was just rewarding in so many other ways. And there is value to that, and there is that other wealth that we don't talk about. So, that gives us peace, that gives us purpose. So that was important not to ignore. So that's how I kind of fell into that. Yeah. But
That's
your
amazing.
your story is obviously very interesting as well. And it's so wonderful what you're doing, helping others kind of discover their own divine talent. So,
Oh,
I think
thank
there's a lot of
you.
credit to you on this journey.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we just all, experience some challenges in life, and I guess our purpose in life is to help others once we overcome our challenges to help others overcome theirs, right?
Yeah.
So that is something we do. And do you have favorite writers? Do you have can you name three favorite writers that you come back to?
Yeah, of course. Look, I really like George Eliot because I feel like she was a proto-psychologist ahead of her time. I loved her novels. She really held conflict well. She held cognitive dissonance really well. Like she's able to explore the bittersweetness of life, which I think is the real truth about reality. And I just loved the way she was able to draw the reader in and really get them invested into the characters, probably because they were probably getting really close to their own selves through that. So I love George Eliot. I really enjoy. There's a variety of readers that I really like. I really like Khaled Hosseini. I think he's another great writer who can do that. Elizabeth Gilbert. Um, in my younger years, I loved Judy Blume. I thought she was fantastic. She was a much needed author for teenagers who had nowhere else to turn to explore difficult things like puberty and this, sexual health and all of that. She was fantastic. Um, yeah, there's so many authors that I could go on about. I really like Amal Towles. I love Gentleman in Moscow. I thought that was a really creative, but again, deeply philosophical book. Yeah, I could go on and on, but I think these are all great writers, and there's so many amazing writers that I've probably missed as well, like and not mentioned, but you know, the Booker Prize winner, the author of Orbital. I thought her book was fantastic, very beautiful, in terms of looking out into the planet and her different characters and that she sort of put together. Like, yeah, I think we're lucky to live in a world with so many talented writers, and I hope that AI doesn't overshadow them. My only
Yeah,
worry.
absolutely. Yeah. So my next question is about the book's popularity in today's world. So a lot of people these days argue that people are reading less and less. So books lose relevance because people prefer TikTok or they prefer YouTube or other social media. So what do you think in relation to this problem? So are books really losing relevance?
Look, I think there's always going to be a place for long form content, and I think books are wonderful long pieces of long form content, or even if you're reading a short story collection or an essay or poetry collection, like they all still have their values because it's still another form of storytelling. And I think we're such storytelling creatures. I think language developed because of storytelling. I think we need storytelling as a part of our very essence of being because we're such social creatures, and um, our ability to reason means that again we need storytelling. So I think books in the format that they're in, I think it's just another medium, and I don't think it's gonna go away. Like, in fact, I think new genres are still being innovated. Like the novel format is still pretty new. It's not something that's been around for years and years. Yes, in ancient in ancient Greek times, they did have the early novels, but still, I think reading and reading media is still innovating. And then, of course, we just have the digital medias to complement it. Um, you know, yeah. And then audiobooks are again another way to experience a story with a bit more of an emotional uh, component to it, because when we read, we don't always get a voice that brings in the emotion, but we do get the written stuff. So yeah, look, I think reading is a good place for the imagination to thrive, and the media such as YouTube and social media and TikTok, that's not going to allow us to fantasize, or use our imagination. So I think just for that very reason, I think books will stay alive, you know.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I also hope books stay alive. So there's so much, they bring so much benefit to us.
Yes,
And
yeah.
let's talk about your books. So you have, I've seen your website, you published 2 books, right? And so basically your most recent one is about bibliotherapy.
Yep,
And
the healing
um,
power of
can,
reading. Yeah.
the healing power of reading. And did you publish it with Hachette? Can you tell us a little bit more about your, publishing process?
Yes, I published it with a Hachette imprint. So Little Brown Book Group is one of the sort of sub-publishing companies of Hachette, and then within that an imprint called Piatkus. And I honestly didn't think that the book was going to happen. Like, I had the book proposal, it was shelved a couple of times, and then I tried it again after a few years, and there was one publisher interested, and eventually it led to like 4 publishers being interested. So there was a 4-way auction for the book, which is wonderful. Um, and then, once the book proposal was there, it didn't take very long to actually flesh out the book, but the editing process probably took longer than my writing process, because that was really shaping the book up. So it was almost like, an 18-month journey from the time that I signed the book deal to publication of the hardback. And I'm still in that process, because now the paperback's coming out 18 months later. And then, of course, the world tour, and the book coming out in the US, and then India and other parts of the Commonwealth, Canada. It's already out in lots of places like Australia and Japan and South Africa and the UAE. And then, of course, all the translation rights that happen with which my publisher deals with. So their rights team do most of these deals. So it's nice that now it's coming into different European languages like Portuguese and Bulgarian and Turkish and Slovenian, Hungarian, and then the Chinese and Arabic versions have just signed as well. So yeah, I'm just excited to get it out to as many people as possible. I had to use a lot of composites for my clients because of the legal risks. But I still got all the client stories in there, and all the different bibliotherapy techniques. I only touched on a few in this video, but in this podcast. But yeah. And the history. And then, of course, lots of reading recommendations at the end of the book, which, of course, took a lot of time to research, for different mental health themes, from anxiety to depression to midlife crises to change to relationship issues to menopause, like all those A to Z themes. And I have a section at the back that covers fiction, nonfiction, poetry for each theme, that I hope will be helpful for readers. Just when they're struggling through something, they can pick up one of these books. So it really is like a love letter to literature, I think, and helping to promote other authors' works, that I think is helpful as well. So yeah.
Lovely. Congratulations. It's an amazing achievement, and it's so great that you've got a publishing deal with such a big publishing house. So
Thank
if
you.
you have any recommendations to the aspiring authors who are, struggling to get into publishing, into getting publishing deals, what would be your recommendations?
Look, I would just say, like, do not give up because you just don't know what's around the corner. Like, I gave up I gave up twice, and I really didn't think that third attempt was going to go anywhere. And then one publisher was interested, and that's all it takes. It just takes that one. I mean, it was a very small publisher, and that kind of led to bigger publishers. So, like, you just don't know where things will go, and I'd say, like, persistence is always the game, in the end, the long game. So, if you really believe in a story, don't give up, and just believe in it. And I think it's really easy for self-doubt to take hold. And I think that's the real battle, the battle with ourselves, to keep going. So I think that would be my advice, is to just, like, be your own cheerleader and just keep going, because and even self-publishing is an option. My first book I self-published, and I loved it. I loved the whole process. I loved the control that I had. So just don't give up. Like, if your end goal is to get it into the hands of readers, there are ways to make it happen. So
Oh, that's very optimistic. Can you tell us a little bit more about your first book that you published?
oh yes, yeah. So I mean, the first book was an independently published book. It was called The Happiness Mindset, and it's a very short book, but it was just 12 strategies for life, from cultivating creativity, from leveraging gratitude, from vision boarding, from identifying your values. Like, it was very much a way of living your best life, essentially, and just some strategies to employ every day, to feel empowered. And that book was written almost 10 years before this one was published. But it gave me a real insight into the writing process, editing process, the marketing process, like getting readers interested in the book. So yeah, it was a real learning curve, but it was also quite I think it was an important process to go through, and an important stage to then getting to the traditionally published stage, I feel, because you just knew what to expect in many ways. Yeah.
Hmm. And many people say that, well, it's not worth it to write a book. So I've heard this from even my friends. So it's not worth the time because it's so hard to market, and it's such a tough environment overall. So what argument would you give to people who are hesitant to write a book, but deep inside they really want to? So
Yeah, look, I think, you know, I think even if you got 10 readers, or even got one reader interested in your book, I think that in itself has done the job, because you've been able to influence somebody with your story and connect with someone else, connect a reader to your story, and that might be really helpful for them, and it might give them meaning in some way, and you might have really helped someone, like through bibliotherapy. And so I always say, like, just don't give up on that idea, because you know you have to believe in that story for it to help other people, you know um for other people to believe in it, for other people to get value from it. um and don't do it for the money, but do it because you have a story to tell, you have a mission to spread, you have value to offer to the world, and that in itself is rewarding. Like, why do you want to be rich? Because actually, because that money might help other people in such rewarding ways, that's probably the real value of money, you know essentially. It's not necessarily that you're making money and living this amazing lifestyle. It's probably because you're able to give back to society, and you can do that with a book. And I think that's a really important lesson to go away with, you know That is probably the most rewarding. In Indian culture we call that, that sense of duty, the karma, the value of being helpful to someone else. That is the most rewarding of all things, if you're looking at it from a completely altruistic way.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
and how do you feel as a published author? Can you tell us about your experiences in this way?
Look, I think as a published author, I think it does bring a lot of kudos and credibility to your writing, which is always nice, and it then gives you a platform to leverage off, and gives you that extra, boost to then amplify the message. And so it's been so wonderful to touch people in this way, and to hear back from readers and people who have really enjoyed the book. Like, it's so nice to hear their messages and their voices, and yeah, it's a lot of validation in a way, to know that actually it's helping someone. So yeah, it's been a great experience, and it's taken me to lots of different places as well. Like, I was in Istanbul over Christmas delivering a bibliotherapy workshop and doing book signings, and a country that I never knew the book would resonate with, so in so many different ways. And I think Portuguese readers are really interested in it as well, and Slovenian, and I had no idea. So it brings about unknown experiences and surprises, which is nice. It's nice to have surprises rather than a plan that you've mapped out and you want it to happen exactly in that way. It's nice to have these other things come in and bring novelty in different ways. So
Oh, that's
yeah.
great. So fascinating. So coming back to bibliotherapy, so can you tell us the most fascinating healing story that you've had with your clients using bibliotherapy? So maybe the most memorable story.
Yeah, look, the one of the most memorable stories that I mean, I talk about it in the book as well, is this group of mothers who had like miscarriages and had lost their babies at really young ages. I think that was really, really difficult. And grief is always a very complicated emotion, and I think the shared experience through the group bibliotherapy was wonderful, because they were able to connect with each other over something that was so similar to their lived experience, but also connect with literature that aligned with that: grief poetry or grief literature. So it was kind of like a double connection, that somebody was holding the space for you, and that support, which I think, if you are unable to connect with your sadness, somebody else in the group could do it and cry for you. And I think that was very powerful. So I think for me, that's probably been one of the most rewarding experiences. In fact, I'm just launching a course on group bibliotherapy, because I feel like, which is an online course, but I think it's great for book clubs and other people who have shared reading experiences, because I think it's a wonderful way to relieve difficult emotions, like that shared experience. So yeah, that would be the one that I would pick. It's just quite
Okay.
morbid, but yeah.
And I've been a member myself of a book club for a number of years. So can you provide us um, some ideas how we can use bibliotherapy in the context of running a book club or
Yeah,
reading
sure.
group?
So, I mean, I think group bibliotherapy is a little bit different to book clubs, because they're a real set of rules, a real set of code of conduct, because you want people to be a little bit more sensitive to what people are sharing, to be more open, non-judgmental, honest, um, trying to keep things within the group, not sharing them outside. So I think those are the things that really differentiate book club and group bibliotherapy. And of course, shared reading should happen within the group, whereas I think in a book club you might have read before and just coming to discuss the story. So yeah, I think it could be a lot more supportive if you if you brought in all the group bibliotherapy skills into the book club.
Mm. And on your website, I saw that you have also couples bibliotherapy. And
Yes,
I
yeah.
always thought about this as a fascinating way of dealing with couples issues. Can you tell us a little bit more about these aspects of bibliotherapy?
Yeah, so with couples bibliotherapy, you'll come in as a couple, discuss your reading preferences. I'll try and find mutual literature that you both enjoy. I'll share a reading list, and then they'll pick out a book or two, and then they'll almost have like this shared reading experience, and they'll bring their reflections and the things that were really resonant for them, and things that they found helpful, and we'll talk about that in the session. And then I'll give them other techniques, right, like writing letters to each other, or poetry therapy, poems, writing poems to each other, just all of that, those kind of techniques to create a more aligned vision of themselves as a couple, as that shared identity, bringing in shared values, figuring out each other's love languages, often being able to have the language now through a story to talk about an issue which they might have been shying away from. So all of those things can be hugely amplifying for the couple, hugely helpful for the couple. Yeah, in all those ways. So, I think couples bibliotherapy is a really nice way to give people a safe space to explore difficult things and, difficult subjects. So, yeah.
All right. So my next question would be in relation to people who are now interested in becoming bibliotherapists. So what steps can they take to become a bibliotherapist?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think if you're a mental health professional, you could, like I said, bibliotherapy is very much an adjunct skill. So maybe during my online course on bibliotherapy would give them the skills to then bring those skills into their practice. And of course, if you're a librarian or a bookseller or a social worker, again, some of the skills on that course might be really helpful as well, to use them in your everyday work. And if you're not any of those, but you'd like to learn more about it, I'd say, do the course, do some sort of a counseling qualification or a coaching qualification, and then see if you can marry the two. There are other organizations as well, which might be more lengthy, like 4 years of training, with some of them with prerequisites for literature as well as a counseling. So just to have a closer look at those. But in the first instance, I have about five courses now on bibliotherapy skills, which you might find really useful from. The main one is bibliotherapy, literature, and mental health. But then I have a children's one. I have Indian Rasa theory, which is an ancient Indian philosophy on emotions and the Rasa framework, which is really fascinating, like especially for me being Indian. But also the group bibliotherapy skills. I even have a books and tennis one for like those tennis fans, but because a lot of life coaching comes from tennis coaching, and so I wanted to bring all of those elements together. So like explore the website and see if in the first instance this takes your fancy, because they're quite affordable and approximately 4-hour courses, so online, so anyone can do them from home. So that might be a good way to start. Yeah.
And how do you progress in your courses? Do you need to do homework, any quizzes, assignments?
There are a few quizzes in the course, but not necessarily assignments. I think for people then looking to establish it further, I would suggest one-to-one coaching, and I can sort of, help you with that, and I might set some homework in those sessions, like assignments, or design a reading list, or design group bibliotherapy session, or and some people actually want to then bring it to their book clubs or want to pilot something, then we can put together a structure. So for that, I'd say like one-to-one training is good, and also supervision if you want to talk about difficult subjects or traumatic things, then they can share that with me in supervision and how to sort of tackle those. So that's a separate, like, so there's a coaching session, which is one-to-one, but there's also the supervision session, which is one-to-one. But obviously addressing different things. Yeah.
And for the counselors, so people who are already doing counseling work at the moment, so can they use bibliotherapy skills within their jobs, so within their counseling, or
Yeah.
they need
Yeah.
special permission, or
I mean, at the moment, there's no body that provides accreditation for bibliotherapy. I mean, there are a few, like I mentioned. There's the International Federation, I think, of Bibliopoetry Therapists, and that's more poetry facilitation. But I think, like I said, it's bibliotherapy very much overlays, like you're still using very similar counseling skills. So if you have the accreditation by a counseling body, then I think you can then just bring in the skills that I teach into your work, the techniques, how to help somebody connect with the literature, to use that literature, to explore that literature. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah. So it's and a lot of counselors that I train then do offer it to their clients in that way. Yeah.
so they can use bibliotherapy skills within the context of their organizations, where they
Yeah,
do
exactly. Once
counseling.
they've done the courses and they feel comfortable using it, they can use it. If they've got more questions or things that they're trying to work through, then I always suggest coaching sessions. And I also curate reading lists, book prescriptions. So for people who don't necessarily want to see a counselor or anything like that, they've also got the reading list to help them at home. But anyway, sorry, I think that goes off on a tangent. But yeah, to your question. But yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Bijal. I'm aware of time,
Thank
so
you,
we're
Alena.
almost running out of time. So if you have any last recommendation to our audience, if you in relation to book reading, in relation to bibliotherapy, so what would you say to our audience?
Gosh, I mean, I mean, of course, there's my book, which is a history of, it talks about bibliotherapy in all its forms. So I'm not going to talk about that book, but I think, you know, if you like therapy stories, Laurie Gottlieb's Maybe You Should Talk to Someone's great, just for an introduction to psychology. But also Irvin Yalom's book, like Love's Executioner and Other Stories. Even his book on group therapy, like I think his work on the psychoanalytical anecdotal stories that he's captured in his books are fantastic. But if you're looking for just some fiction, non-fiction recommendations for different things, on my website again I have lots of free book recommendations for different issues. So I'd say like just explore these depending on what you're going through, whatever some of the books that I enjoyed over the last year, I really liked Miranda July's All Fours. It was a great midlife menopausal novel. But for somebody I really liked Orbital, the book that the Booker Prize winner. I thought her writing was phenomenal, like fiction, just things that make you think about life in different ways. There's Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. That's an evergreen book that lots of people read and enjoy. Quite heavy on Lagan logo theory. But I mean, Ian Banks's book, Culture and Society, that's interesting. I mean, I could just go on and on for like ever. Um, but yeah, I mean, memoirs are great as well. So there's a few memoirs that came out like that were fascinating. The Women I Think About at Night on creativity. It's a memoir about this woman who goes traveling to different places and visits the homelands of the artists that really inspired her, like Yo-Yo Kasuma and Karen Blixen. So she goes to Africa, Kenya for that story. She goes to Japan to visit the psychiatric institutions that Yo-Yo Kasuma spent time in. She goes to the Uffizi galleries of Florence. Like it's beautiful for her to she quits a job and just goes on this creative pursuit to see what was the inspiration behind these great acts and talents of art in different ways, writing, creating art, design, all of that. So yeah, I mean that memoir is great. The Woman I Think About at Night. Um yeah, I mean I could go on forever. But do check out that A to Z of reading lists on my website. That they're all free recommendations of tons of reading lists.
Thanks, Vijal. We will post the website link to this video so the audience can check out your website and your books. And yeah, I'm really interested in your story, and your books are, you know, so fascinating. So bibliotherapy is something new to me, but I always liked reading and writing. So it looks like something that I definitely should read next on my list. Yes, thank you
Yeah,
so
please do let
much.
me know. I hope you love it. Thank you, Lena. Thank you so much for
Yes.
having me. I really appreciate it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Thanks so much. Okay.